The lights of Vegas were blinding, or maybe that was just the 6 cocktails I downed since the reception started. My husband, glued to his phone, barely noticed me all evening. "It's a big deal, babe. Gotta close this," he'd muttered, his eyes never leaving the screen. So, there I was, drowning in a sea of strangers, feeling more alone than ever. That's when I met Alex. He had this easy charm, a smile that felt like it was just for me. We talked, laughed, and danced. It was exhilarating, feeling wanted again. I let myself be swept away in the moment, forgetting the ring on my finger, the husband who might as well have been 1,000 miles away. The night blurred into a cascade of bad decisions. I ended up in Alex's hotel room, the city's neon lights casting shadows across us. It was a moment of madness, a desperate grab at feeling something, anything. When I woke up the next morning, the weight of what I'd done hit me like a freight train. I slipped out before Alex woke up, my heart pounding with guilt. I tried to act normal after that, but the guilt gnawed at me with every smile my husband gave me, every "I love you," he said. I felt like a fraud. The secret ate away at me, a constant reminder of the line I'd crossed. 2 weeks later, the consequences became more than just emotional. Symptoms I couldn't ignore sent me to the doctor, and then came the diagnosis that felt like a death sentence. An STD. My world crumbled. How was I going to explain this? I couldn't. I started treatment in secret, every doctor's visit a clandestine operation. The fear of my husband finding out was a shadow that followed me everywhere. I was trapped in a web of my own making, every thread a lie, every movement precarious. The vibrant lights of Vegas seemed a world away, a stark contrast to the darkness I felt enveloping me. My husband, still oblivious, continued to bury himself in work, unaware of the storm brewing in his own home. And I, too scared to face the consequences of my actions, kept silent, hoping against hope that this secret would somehow disappear. But deep down I knew. Secrets have a way of coming out, and mine was a ticking time bomb, ready to destroy everything I held dear. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. It was like the universe had a twisted sense of humor, throwing me into a pit of quicksand. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank. My phone buzzed with a message that made my heart stop. It was from Jenna, my ex-girlfriend who'd been at the wedding, too. "Saw you weren't yourself that night. Everything okay?" It read, but the underlying tone screamed, "I know what you did." I tried to play it cool, typing back a vague, "Yeah, just too much to drink. You know how it gets." But Jenna wasn't buying it. She replied with something that turned my blood cold. "Got some interesting videos from the wedding. You sure looked like you were having fun." My stomach dropped. "Videos? How? Why?" I couldn't let this hang over me. So, I did what I thought I had to. I met with Jenna. Seeing her again brought back a mix of emotions, but fear was the frontrunner. "Please, Jenna, tell me you don't have what I think you have," I pleaded, my voice barely above a whisper. She just looked at me, an unreadable expression on her face, before sliding her phone across the table. The video was unmistakable. There I was, with Alex, in a way no married woman should ever be caught. The price for her silence? More money than I'd like to admit. Handing it over felt like I was signing a pact with the devil, but what choice did I have? Every beep of my phone, every glance from my husband, felt like a countdown to my world exploding. And explode it did, but not in the way I expected. My husband, the tech wizard, noticed the unusual bank withdrawals. "Hey, babe, our account's looking a little funny, you know anything about that?" His casual tone belied the sharpness in his eyes. I brushed it off with a lie about unexpected expenses, but the seed of doubt was planted. The constant fear of Jenna releasing the video, combined with my husband's growing suspicion, was a cocktail of stress I couldn't digest. I was living on the edge, every day a step closer to the precipice. My husband's behavior changed. He became more observant, his questions more pointed. I noticed him spending more time on his computer, his brows furrowed in concentration. I knew he was digging, and it was only a matter of time before he hit the dirt. Every moment was tinged with the anticipation of disaster. My husband, once oblivious, now watched me with a hawk's eye, piecing together the puzzle of my lies. The tension in our home was palpable, a thick fog of unsaid accusations and unasked questions. I was trapped in a web of my own making, every thread a lie that bound me tighter. The fear of being found out was a constant shadow, darkening every moment of supposed happiness. The truth was a ticking bomb, and I was waiting for it to detonate. The day started with a sense of foreboding I couldn't shake off. My husband had been quieter than usual, his glances more piercing. I chalked it up to my guilty conscience, but deep down, I knew the storm was brewing. Then, I noticed the new security cameras installed around our home. Just a precaution, he said, but his eyes told a different story. My world was teetering on the edge, and I was desperately clinging to the facade of normalcy. But it all came crashing down when my husband confronted me one evening, his face a mask of calm that belied the storm raging inside. Had an interesting chat with Jenna today, he began, and my heart stopped. How? When? The questions spiraled in my mind, but I remained silent, frozen. He laid the evidence before me, videos and pictures that painted a vivid picture of my betrayal. It felt like watching the premiere of my nightmare, with my husband as the unwilling audience. How could you? He asked, his voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through me sharper than any scream. I had no words, just tears and a plea for forgiveness that sounded hollow even to my own ears. I'm sorry. I was lost. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, I sobbed, the truth pouring out in a torrent of regret. But apologies couldn't undo the hurt, couldn't erase the images that now burned in his memory. He listened, or at least, he pretended to, his face an unreadable mask. When I finished, the silence between us was deafening. Then, without a word, he walked away, the finality in his steps echoing louder than any goodbye. The days that followed were a blur. I reached out, tried to explain, to make him see it was a mistake, that I was still the woman he married. But it was like talking to a ghost. He was there, but not really. His decision was made, and soon, so was his move. Boxes packed, bags zipped up, and with one last look that didn't quite meet my eyes, he was gone. Left in the echoing silence of our home, I was forced to confront the reality of what I'd done. The walls that once held laughter and love now stood as silent witnesses to my downfall. I had thought I could keep it a secret, that my transgressions would fade away with time. But the truth has a way of clawing its way out, leaving destruction in its wake. His departure marked the end of our life together, a chapter closed with a silence that was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I was left to pick up the pieces of the life I'd shattered, each fragment a reminder of the love I'd betrayed. The loneliness was a constant companion, a shadow that followed me through the empty rooms, a reminder of the cost of my actions. In the aftermath, I realized the gravity of what I'd lost. It wasn't just my husband, but the trust we'd built, the future we'd dreamed of. All gone, because of a moment's folly, because of a choice I made. The weight of my decisions bore down on me, a heavy cloak of guilt and regret I'd wear for the rest of my days. The lesson was a harsh one, learned in the cruelest of ways. Trust, once broken, was not easily mended, and some mistakes carried consequences that echoed far beyond the moment of their making. I was left alone, the architect of my own misery, a stark reminder of the price of betrayal. In the aftermath of my world imploding, reaching out to him felt like trying to bridge an ever-widening chasm with nothing but frayed ropes of hope. But every attempt to connect, to explain, to apologize, was met with the digital equivalent of a slammed door. Blocked. On every app, every platform. It was as if he was erasing me from his life, one click at a time. The silence from his end was deafening, but the noise from everywhere else was overwhelming. Whispers turned into rumors, rumors into glaring headlines in the tabloid of our social circle. My name, once spoken with affection or respect, was now tinged with disdain and judgment. Did you hear what she did? They didn't need to say my name. Everyone knew who she was. The messages started pouring in. Some were veiled in concern, but most were naked in their hostility. How could you? I thought I knew you. Every word was a dagger, and I was bleeding out, unable to defend myself against the onslaught. Friends I'd laughed with, shared secrets with, turned their backs, their silhouettes joining the growing crowd of my accusers. Work became a minefield. I could feel the eyes on me, heavy with unasked questions and unsaid accusations. My desk, once a place of productivity and pride, felt like a pillory. I could almost hear the whispers, feel the judgment pressing down on me. That's her. Can you believe it? My career, once on an upward trajectory, was now spiraling, caught in the gravity of my personal failings. When the divorce papers arrived, it felt like a formality. A rubber stamp on the end of my marriage, of the life I'd known. Infidelity cited in black and white, a scarlet letter I'd wear in the court of public opinion. My lawyer, a woman with kind eyes that didn't quite reach the rest of her face, tried her best to prepare me. It's not looking good, she'd said, a master of understatement. The evidence was damning, and my pleas for understanding, for leniency, fell on deaf ears. The proceedings were a blur, a swift and merciless cutting of ties. He was there, looking right through me as if I was already a ghost in his past. The judge's voice was distant, the words barely registering until the final decree was pronounced. Divorce. Just like that, it was over. He got everything he wanted, and why wouldn't he? The evidence was irrefutable, my mistakes undeniable. I left the courtroom feeling hollow. The finality of it all was a weight, dragging me down into a reality I still couldn't fully grasp. I was no longer a wife, no longer part of the us I'd clung to, even as it slipped through my fingers. The future, once shared, was now a path I had to walk alone, every step reminding me of what I'd lost. The drive home was automatic, the streets familiar yet foreign, as if I was seeing them through the veil of my new reality. The house, once filled with laughter and love, was just a building now, its walls echoing with the remnants of a life that was no longer mine. Sitting in the silence, I realized the full extent of what my actions had cost me. Not just my marriage, but my place in the world. My reputation, my friendships, my career, everything was tainted, damaged beyond repair. The divorce might have been the legal end of my marriage, but the consequences of my betrayal were just beginning to unfold. The ink on the divorce papers hadn't even dried before the reality of my new life began to set in. Money, once a shared resource in our marriage, was now a source of constant anxiety. The divorce settlement had left me with little, and the blackmail payments to Jenna had drained what little reserves I had left. It felt like I was paying the price for my actions, not just emotionally, but literally. Moving out of the home I had shared with my husband was a sobering experience. I traded our spacious, warm house for a cramped, cold apartment on the outskirts of town. The walls were thin, the neighbors noisy, and the sense of isolation palpable. It was a stark reminder of how far I'd fallen, of the gap between the life I once had and the one I was now forced to navigate. The STD diagnosis added a layer of complexity to my already complicated situation. It was a permanent mark of my indiscretion, a scar I would carry with me. The shame was sometimes too much to bear, a constant reminder of that one night and its irreversible consequences. I tried to pick up the pieces, to build something resembling a normal life. But the shame of what I had done followed me like a shadow. Friends I once confided in had turned their backs on me, and my professional life was in tatters. Starting over was harder than I had imagined. The world seemed to have moved on without me, leaving me behind with my mistakes. Meanwhile, my husband seemed to flourish in the aftermath of our divorce. Pictures of him smiling and laughing with friends started appearing on social media, a stark contrast to the lonely existence I now led. Seeing him so happy, so unburdened by the past we shared, was a painful reminder of what I had lost. The life we had built together was now just a memory, one that he seemed all too eager to forget. The loneliness was suffocating. In a desperate attempt to fill the void, I tried dating again. But my heart wasn't in it. Trust, once given so freely, was now a commodity I couldn't afford. My past was a barrier, a wall that kept me from connecting with anyone new. The fear of being judged, of having my secrets exposed all over again, made it impossible to open up. Relationships, once a source of joy, had become a minefield of potential heartbreak. Every attempt at starting anew was met with the cold reality of my situation. The judgment of others was a constant companion, a reminder of the society's unforgiving nature. I was branded, marked by my mistakes, and no matter how hard I tried to move on, the past always seemed to catch up with me. In the silence of my apartment, the weight of my choices bore down on me. The contrast between my life and my husband's recovery was a bitter pill to swallow. He had moved on, healed by the passage of time and the support of friends. I, on the other hand, was stuck in a limbo of my own making, unable to escape the consequences of that fateful night. The realization that I had lost not just my husband but myself in the process was devastating. The person I once was seemed like a stranger, a reminder of a life filled with promise that was now out of reach. The journey to reclaim some sense of self, to find redemption in the wreckage of my past, was daunting. But it was a journey I had to undertake, not for anyone else, but for myself. The road to recovery was long, and the outcome uncertain, but the first step was acknowledging the depth of my fall and the possibility of rising again. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, the universe proved me wrong. Jenna was back, like a bad sequel to a movie you wish you'd never watched. Her message was clear: pay up, or the world gets an encore of my worst moment. But this time, something in me snapped. What more did I have to lose? My reputation was in shreds, my personal life a disaster. So I told her no. I refused to be blackmailed any longer. Big mistake. The videos hit the internet faster than a wildfire, each share, each view, another twist of the knife. My phone exploded with notifications, a relentless reminder of my fall from grace. Friends, family, strangers, it didn't matter. The judgment was unanimous, and it was brutal. Work was no refuge. The whispers, the stares, the outright disdain, it was too much. My boss called me into his office, his face a mask of professional regret. "I'm sorry," he said, "but we have to let you go." The reasons were vague, cloaked in corporate speak, but the message was clear. I was too much of a liability, a scandal they couldn't afford to be associated with. So, just like that, I was jobless, another casualty of my own making. The isolation was suffocating. Friends who hadn't already deserted me now did, unable to associate with the pariah I'd become. My family was supportive, but their attempts at comfort felt like band-aids on a gaping wound. Depression became my constant companion, whispering sweet nothings about my worthlessness, my failure. Happiness seemed like a concept designed for others, a club to which I no longer belonged. And then, the coup de grace. My husband, now my ex, published a book. Overcoming Betrayal, hit the shelves and skyrocketed to the top of the charts. It was everywhere. Interviews, talk shows, glowing reviews. Each mention was a reminder of the chasm between us, of the life and love I'd squandered. His success was the final nail in the coffin of our shared past. He had moved on, turned our tragedy into his triumph, while I remained trapped in the purgatory of my mistakes. Sitting alone in my dimly lit apartment, the contrast between our lives couldn't have been starker. He had risen from the ashes of our marriage, a phoenix reborn, while I lingered in the shadows, a ghost of the woman I once was. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to find myself, I had lost everything that mattered. My choices, my actions, had led me here, to this moment of stark realization. The road ahead seemed bleak, a never-ending tunnel with no light in sight. Yet, in the depths of despair, a flicker of defiance sparked within me. Was I going to let this be the end of my story? A tale of caution, of loss and defeat? The thought was unbearable. With nothing left to lose, I realized I had everything to gain. Rebuilding my life wouldn't be easy, but perhaps, in the wreckage of my past, I could find the foundation for something new, something true. It was a slim hope, a fragile seed in the barren landscape of my life. But it was mine, and in that moment, it was enough. Flipping through channels, I stumbled upon him, larger than life on the screen, speaking with a calm I barely recognize. He was discussing his book, his journey of overcoming betrayal. His words, so measured and insightful, seemed to pierce through the haze of my existence. It was in that moment, watching him articulate his pain and recovery, that the full weight of what I had done settled on my shoulders. He had seen through me, understood the depth of my betrayal, and had found a way to transform it into a beacon for others. I was both proud and devastated. Driven by a surge of desperation, I decided to reach out to him one last time. Maybe there was a sliver of hope for forgiveness, for some form of closure that could ease the aching void between us. I penned a letter, pouring every ounce of my regret and longing into the words, and sent it through a friend, our last remaining link. Days passed in silence, each one heavier than the last, until the message finally came. Not in his handwriting, not in his voice, but through the cold, digital text from our mutual friend. He said there's nothing left to say. Those 6 words felt like a door slamming shut, the final echo of a love that once filled my life with warmth and possibility. The realization that I was truly alone, that my actions had irrevocably severed the bond with the one person who had once loved me unconditionally, was crushing. I looked around the empty apartment, its walls bearing witness to my unraveling. This place, devoid of memories or warmth, was a stark testament to my fall from grace. The loneliness was palpable, a constant companion that reminded me of the cost of my choices. As I sat amidst the remnants of my former life, the full extent of my loss dawned on me. My future, once bright with promise and shared dreams, was now a barren landscape, shaped by the choices of my past. There was no going back, no words that could bridge the chasm I had created. The realization that there was no hope for reconciliation, no chance for redemption, settled in with a finality that took my breath away. In that moment of profound solitude, I understood the true cost of my actions. It wasn't just the loss of my marriage, or the public scandal, or even the career I had painstakingly built. It was the loss of myself, the person I had been before the choices that led me here. I had traded everything for a moment of escape, and the price was my very soul. The journey from here was uncertain, a path unmarked and daunting. But it was mine to take. In the depths of despair, I found a flicker of resolve, a stubborn refusal to be defined by my worst moments. The road to redemption was long, perhaps endless, but it was the only way forward. As the chapter of my life with him closed, a new one awaited, written not with the expectation of forgiveness or redemption from others, but with the hope of finding them within myself. It was a small hope, fragile and uncertain, but it was all I had. And in the silence of my empty apartment, it was enough to light the first step of a long journey. It's our 5th anniversary. Mark and I are at this fancy restaurant that we've been saving up for, clinking glasses and doing the whole, "Oh, babe, remember when?" bit. It was like something out of a movie, complete with the dim lighting and a violinist who kept playing love songs. We were planning, dreaming about the future, the whole 9 yards. It should have been perfect, but here's the kicker. I was feeling this gnawing emptiness inside. Like, no matter how sweet Mark was, something was just off. So, cut to a few weeks later, and there's me, sneaking around with Alex, this guy from work. I know, total cliche, right? But Alex was all excitement and danger, the complete opposite of my life with Mark. We'd meet up in these out-of-the-way hotels, the kind where nobody would look twice at us. I got good at lying, too good, telling Mark one was working late or out with the girls. It was thrilling, but deep down, I felt like crap. Then, bam, life throws me a curveball. I'm pregnant. Panic doesn't even start to cover it. Mark can't have kids. He's been sterile since this accident we had a few years back. So, you can imagine the freak out I had. I hit the internet, looking for any way to keep this under wraps. Ended up deciding to spin it as some kind of miracle. I thought, hey, maybe Mark will just go with it, right? Breaking the news to Mark was like jumping out of a plane without a parachute. I spun this yarn about miracles and second chances. You should have seen his face, tears and joy and disbelief all mixed together. For a moment, I almost believed my own lie. But then, enter stage left, Mark's mom. She's like Miss Marple, I swear. Suggests a paternity test to celebrate the miracle for future generations. I tried to play it cool, tried to talk Mark out of it, but the look in his eyes, I couldn't crush that hope. So, there we were, at the clinic, getting the test done. Me, trying not to vomit from the nerves, and Mark, oblivious and dreaming of baby names. This whole charade was spiraling, and fast. I was stuck in a web of my own lies, waiting for everything to crash down. And let me tell you, sitting there, waiting for those results, was the longest moment of my life. All I could think was, how the hell did I get here? Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. So, let me tell you about the time my world turned upside down, and I mean, seriously flipped on its head. It all started with what should have been a simple doctor's visit, but boy, was I wrong. Mark's mom, bless her heart, insisted we get this paternity test. Said it'd be a great story for the grandkids. Imagine telling them about the miracle baby, she'd say. Mark was over the moon, couldn't wait. Me, I was a mess. Trying to talk them out of it was like trying to stop a freight train with a stop sign. Mark was just too excited, and his mom, well, she wasn't backing down. So, I caved, feeling like I was marching straight into a disaster movie with no way out. The day of the test was surreal. There we were, in the clinic, Mark holding my hand, smiling like we were just there for a routine checkup. Me, I was sweating bullets, exchanging glances with Mark, who was completely clueless about the storm brewing inside me. I tried to smile back, but it probably looked more like a grimace. Sitting in that clinic, waiting for the results, felt like an eternity. My heart was racing, thoughts swirling in a tornado of fear and guilt. How did I let things get this far? I kept asking myself, but deep down I knew the answer, and it wasn't pretty. Then, the moment of truth arrived. The doctor came in, results in hand, and I knew my world was about to shatter. The test confirms that Mark is not the biological father, he said, matter-of-factly. The room went silent, the kind of silence that screams Mark's face. I'll never forget it. It was like watching someone's soul get crushed in real time. Mark turned to me, his eyes searching for an explanation. Jenna, what's going on? He asked, his voice a mix of confusion and pain. That's when the dam broke. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Through tears and sobs, I spilled everything, the affair, the lies, the fear. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, laying bare the worst parts of myself to the person I loved most. Mark didn't say a word. He just stood up, his face a mask of hurt and betrayal, and walked out. Just like that, he was gone. The silence he left behind was deafening. I sat there alone, my heart breaking into a million pieces. That was the day my marriage ended, not with a bang, but with a heartbreaking silence. I had lost the love of my life because I couldn't face the truth about myself. The guilt, the shame, it was all consuming. I knew I had to face the consequences of my actions, no matter how much they scared me. But let me tell you, nothing prepares you for the moment you realize you've destroyed everything you ever cared about. And that, my friend, is a lesson I'll never forget. Let me dive right into the storm that became my life. No sugar-coating or beating around the bush. After Mark walked out, leaving me in a silence that was louder than any argument, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. Oh, how wrong I was. The real hurricane was just picking up speed, and its name was revenge. Mark, bless his heart, wasn't the type to cause a scene or seek revenge. But this time, the hurt ran too deep. I found out about his plan the same way everyone else did. A detailed email landed in the inbox of our friends, family, and, because fate loves a good laugh, even some coworkers. That email laid everything bare. My affair, the pregnancy, the paternity test results. It was like watching my life implode in digital format. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Friends I'd known for years suddenly turned cold, their eyes and words sharper than knives. Family gatherings became minefields, my presence the elephant in the room nobody wanted to address. I went from being Jenna to that woman, the subject of whispers and pitying glances. It's one thing to mess up your life, but watching your mistake ripple through your entire social circle? That's a special kind of hell. Work became a battleground. The whispers didn't just stay in my personal life, they followed me to my desk, my emails, even the break room. Colleagues who used to greet me with smiles now offered nothing but cold shoulders and judgmental stares. Meetings were the worst. I could feel every eye on me, not for my contributions, but for the scandal I'd brought to the table. My professional reputation, built over years of hard work, crumbled in days. Isolation doesn't just describe being physically alone, it's the feeling of being surrounded by people and yet completely cut off. My closest friends, the ones I thought would stick by me through thick and thin, withdrew their support. The reasoning was always polite, the excuses well rehearsed, but the message was clear. I was on my own. Financial strain? Oh, it hit like a freight train. Mark filed for divorce, and he was merciless. He sought no financial obligations, leaving me to drown in the economic aftermath of our shattered marriage. The man I once shared a bed with now shared nothing but contempt. Bills piled up, savings dwindled, and the reality of single parenthood loomed over me like a dark cloud. Then came the legal battles, the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday. Finding a lawyer willing to take my case felt impossible. Sympathy was in short supply, and my bank account couldn't compete with Mark's resolve. Each court appearance, each legal document, was a reminder of the mess I'd made. So, there I was, standing in the ruins of the life I once knew, a pariah in my own story. Betrayal, heartbreak, and the consequences of my actions had stripped away everything I held dear. Friends, family, career, gone, all because I thought I could have my cake and eat it too. Turns out, life doesn't work that way, and the price of my mistakes was higher than I ever could have imagined. Imagine waking up every morning with a heart so heavy it feels like it's drowning in a sea of regret. That's my life now. Ever since the truth came out, I've been swallowed whole by this black hole of depression. It's like I'm stuck in this endless loop of replaying every wrong choice I made, feeling the weight of them crushing me day after day. The worst part? Mark won't even talk to me. His silence is deafening, a constant reminder of the trust one shattered. I've tried reaching out, but it's like talking to a brick wall. He's made it clear there's no coming back from this. Every unread message, every unanswered call, is a stab reminding me of what I lost. Then there's stepping outside. You'd think I'd committed the crime of the century the way people look at me. Whispers follow me like a shadow, and the stares. It's like they can see right through to all my mistakes. Going to the grocery store feels like walking the plank. There goes the woman who ruined her marriage, their eyes seem to say. It's a public shaming of the worst kind. One day, it all became too much. I stood in front of the mirror and really looked at myself, seeing the full extent of the wreckage I caused. It hit me like a freight train. I can't undo the hurt I've inflicted, not on Mark, not on anyone. That realization? It's a bitter pill to swallow. I understood, truly understood, that I had to face the consequences of my actions, no matter how much they scared me. So, I made the decision to leave, to try and start over in a different city where no one knew my name or my story. I thought a fresh start might be the answer, a way to escape the judgment and the whispers. But let me tell you, starting over isn't as easy as it sounds. It's one thing to move to a new place, it's another to escape your past. Everywhere I went, I felt like an outsider, struggling to fit in, to make connections that weren't shadowed by my mistakes. The loneliness is suffocating. There are days when the only conversation I have is with the reflection in the mirror. I find myself missing the life I had, even with its flaws, yearning for a time when I wasn't this person I've become. The regret is a constant companion, whispering, what if, scenarios that keep me up at night. I think back to the affair, to the thrill I thought it brought into my life, and I realize how fleeting and meaningless it all was. The price I paid for that fleeting excitement was everything that truly mattered. So here I am, in this new city, surrounded by faces that don't know my story, but also don't care to. The days blend into one another, each as lonely as the last. I keep to myself, scared that any new connection might unravel if they find out about my past. It's a strange thing, loneliness. It's not just about being alone, it's feeling disconnected, untethered from the world around you. And in that solitude, I've had nothing but time to reflect on the life I destroyed, the trust one broke, and the love I lost, all for a moment's escape from a reality I thought I didn't want. After everything fell apart, finding a job turned into my own personal nightmare. You'd think job interviews were just about your skills, right? Wrong. Every time my name came up, you could see the hesitation, the quick glances exchanged. It was like my past was this giant elephant in the room, trampling over any chance I had. So, there I was, savings running on fumes, desperation creeping in. I had no choice but to take this job at a local diner. Way below my qualifications, sure, but pride is a luxury when you're trying to survive. It was a tough pill to swallow, going from a career I loved to serving coffee and pie, but it was either that or nothing. And with a baby on the way, nothing wasn't an option. That baby, my little beacon of hope, was what kept me going. Amid the chaos, the judgment, and the loneliness, the thought of bringing a new life into this world was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. It gave me something to hold on to, a reason to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could turn things around. Then, something unexpected happened. At this diner, amidst the greasy spoons and the endless cups of coffee, I found a friend. Sarah, a coworker, with a laugh that could light up the room and a kindness that seemed so rare in my world. She didn't know about my past, and for a while, it was nice to just be Jenna, not that Jenna. We'd share jokes during our shifts, vent about difficult customers, and swap stories about our lives outside of work. It was a slice of normalcy I hadn't realized I was craving. But good things never seem to last, do they? Eventually, my past caught up with me, as it always does. Rumors spread, whispers started, and I saw the change in Sarah's eyes. The warmth faded, replaced by this cold distance. Our friendship crumbled under the weight of my history, leaving me more isolated than ever. It was a harsh reminder that my past was a shadow I couldn't outrun, a mark that wouldn't just wash off. And then, the day came. The day I became a mother. I gave birth alone, a bittersweet moment that was supposed to be shared. Holding my baby for the first time was indescribable, a mix of joy, fear, and overwhelming love. But even in that moment, the shadow of my circumstances loomed large. This tiny, perfect little person had no idea of the storm that brought them into the world. Just when I thought I might find a way to navigate this new life, the final blow came. Mark's lawyer contacted me, cold and formal, delivering the news that Mark wanted nothing to do with the child. No custody battles, no shared holidays, nothing. It was like the final piece of my old life had been snatched away, leaving me to face this new reality utterly alone. So, there I was, a new mom, with a job that barely paid the bills, no support system to speak of, and a heart so full of love for this little human but also so broken by everything that had led to this point. It was the start of a new chapter, one I had no idea how to write, but for my baby's sake, I knew I had to try. So there I was, thinking maybe, just maybe, if I put my side of the story out there, people might see things differently. Spoiler alert. It backfired. Big time. The local paper ran my story, and instead of the sympathy or understanding I was hoping for, it was like I'd given everyone free rein to judge me all over again. The comments section was brutal, a constant stream of condemnation. It felt like I'd reopened a wound that had barely started to heal. And then, as if public opinion wasn't enough to deal with, social services got involved. Yeah, you heard that right. Someone decided that my past mistakes made me unfit to be a mother. They started poking around, asking questions, making me feel like I was on trial in my own home. Every visit from them was a stark reminder that my past actions were far from buried. But amidst the chaos, I found a lifeline, a support group for single mothers. Walking into that first meeting was terrifying. I felt like I was wearing a big neon sign that spelled out all my failures. But these women, they didn't judge. They listened, shared their own stories, and offered advice. It was the first time in a long while I didn't feel completely alone. Things started to look up a bit when I found this small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours, a fresh start for me and the baby. I poured everything I had into making it a home, determined to create a safe and loving environment for my child. It felt like a tangible step towards something better, a piece of normalcy we desperately needed. Just when I started to feel like I could breathe again, I heard the news about Mark. He was engaged, moving on as if our life together had never existed. It was a punch to the gut. Seeing him happy, moving forward without a backward glance, while I was still picking up the pieces of the life he walked away from, it stung. It was the clearest sign yet that his revenge wasn't about making me suffer through actions or words. It was about living his best life without me. That realization hit hard. It wasn't just about losing Mark or the life we had together. It was about confronting the fact that I was the architect of my own downfall. His ability to move on, to find happiness again, was a stark contrast to the world I found myself in, one where every day was a struggle to prove I was a good mother, a struggle to find even a sliver of the happiness he seemed to have found. But here's the thing, I wasn't about to let that be the end of my story. Despite the tarnished reputation, the public condemnation, and the loneliness that seemed to follow me everywhere, I started to fight back in the only way I knew how, by giving my child the love and stability they deserved. It wasn't easy, with every small step forward feeling like a battle. But for the first time, it felt like I was fighting for something truly important. Creating a semblance of normalcy for my child became my mission. It was about more than just surviving. It was about building a life where my past didn't define us. Sure, there were days when the weight of everything felt crushing, when the whispers and stares made me want to hide away forever. But then I'd look at my child's face, see the love and trust there, and it gave me the strength to keep going. So, yeah, life threw me some curveballs, and I made some choices I'll always regret. But through all the mess, the one thing that remained clear was my love for my child. They became my reason to push through the shame, the guilt, and the public scrutiny. And bit by bit, I started to rebuild from the ruins of my past, clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a little peace and happiness in our corner of the world. Ever hit rock bottom and then start digging? That was me. But there comes a moment when you stop, look around at the mess you've made, and decide it's time to climb out. For me, that moment came quietly, not with fanfare or a dramatic turning point. It was just me, facing the mirror, realizing if I didn't start fixing things, nobody would. Becoming a mom changed everything. Sure, society had its judgments, but in those quiet, early morning hours, feeding my baby, none of that mattered. It was just us, and I vowed to be the mom this little one deserved, no matter what anyone else thought. Isolation? It became my unexpected ally. With no one left to turn to, I found a resilience I never knew I had. Each day brought its challenges, but it also brought moments of pure joy with my child. I learned to cherish the small victories, a successful diaper change, a peaceful night, a giggle. These moments became my new measure of success. Determined to build a better future, I signed up for online courses. Every study session was a step toward a new career, a better life for us. Balancing motherhood with studies wasn't easy, but with each completed assignment, I felt a spark of hope. My child's future and mine depended on it. Small victories started piling up. My child's first word, the first time they crawled, then walked. Each milestone was a celebration, just for us. The world outside might have had its opinions, but in our little bubble, we were just fine. But there was one thing I couldn't shake, guilt. So I wrote a letter to Mark. Not to ask for another chance or to stir up the past, but to say sorry. To acknowledge the hurt I caused and to let him know I was working on becoming a better person for our child's sake. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. But writing that letter, it felt like closing a chapter. Every day was a battle, fought in silence. The world saw a single mom struggling to make ends meet, but they didn't see the strength it took to get up every morning, to face the judgment, the hardships, and still choose to be the best mom I could be. That was my silent battle, my path to redemption in the eyes of the one person who mattered most, my child. And through it all, the love for my child was the beacon guiding me through the darkest times. It taught me forgiveness, forgiveness for myself, for the mistakes I made, and for the pain I caused. It showed me that no matter how far you fall, there's always a way back up if you're willing to fight for it. Now, watching my child play, I realize this journey of ours is one of survival and redemption. The past is a painful lesson, but it's one I'll never forget. It's taught me the true meaning of strength, resilience, and unconditional love. My resolve is unyielding, not just to survive but to thrive, for the sake of this little one who's given me so much more than I could ever have imagined. So here I am, a testament to the fact that even from the depths of despair, you can rise. You can find joy in the and a future filled with hope. My child and I, we're on this journey together, and no matter what comes our way, we'll face it with love, determination, and an unbreakable bond that only grows stronger. You'd think marrying a rich guy was the jackpot, right? Well, let me tell you about my life with Paul. It's like living in a gilded cage, shimmering from the outside, but boy, it rattle your soul. The day I met Paul, it was all so ordinary. I was at this networking event, bored out of my mind, nursing a glass of Chardonnay. Then came Paul, Mr. Moneybags himself, but as interesting as watching paint dry. I remember thinking, well, he's not much, but those deep pockets sure are. We married in a whirlwind. I mean, who wouldn't say yes to a 7-carat diamond? The wedding was a spectacle, lavish, over the top. The kind of thing you see in magazines and think, who spends that much on flowers? We did. Life after the wedding? Picture this. Waking up in a king-sized bed with the softest Egyptian cotton sheets you've ever felt. Breakfast is a spread that could feed a small country, but it's just for you. You spend your shopping for things you don't need, with money you didn't earn. It's bliss for like a minute. But here's the thing, it gets old. Fast. Paul was always busy, either glued to his phone or off on some business trip. And me? I was left in this huge mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. I started throwing parties, lots of them. Anything to fill the silence. The who's who of the city would show up, air kisses and fake smiles all around. But as the last guest would leave, the emptiness would hit me like a ton of bricks. One night, as I roamed our marble hallways, I caught a glimpse of myself in a mirror, decked in jewels, dressed to the nines, and utterly, desperately bored. That's when the thought hit me. What if I proposed an open marriage? It was reckless, sure, but I needed something, anything, to feel alive. So I did it. I waited for Paul to return from a trip, sitting in our living room that looked more like a page from Architectural Digest. He walked in, tired but happy to see me. And I dropped the bomb. Paul, I want an open marriage. The words hung in the air, heavy and awkward. Paul just stared at me, his face unreadable. I braced myself for anger, for yelling. But nothing. He simply turned around and walked out of the room. That night, I lay in our massive bed, alone, staring at the ceiling. What had I done? Was it worth it? The silence in the house was deafening, and for the first time, I wondered if I had made a colossal mistake. But hey, be careful what you wish for, right? Because what came next was nothing like I expected. Paul changed, and so did everything else. Ever seen a caterpillar turn into a butterfly? That's Paul, but way less predictable and a lot more baffling. So there I was, thinking my bombshell about an open marriage would blow our world apart. But guess what? Paul didn't explode. He didn't even implode. He just changed like a lot. One day, I noticed it. He's leaving for work, and there's this new spring in his step, a smirk playing on his lips like he's got a secret. And his suits, suddenly sharper, fitting like they're painted on him. I'm like, Who are you? And what have you done with my husband? This new Paul, he's not just more confident, he's like a man on a mission. Always busy, always somewhere to be. And the mystery? It's killing me. He starts coming home late, sometimes not at all. Business, he says, with a shrug that doesn't quite reach his eyes. I'm tossing and turning in our bed, thinking, what's he up to? I start snooping, okay? Can you blame me? I check his phone, his pockets. Nada. It's like he's become this mastermind of secrecy. And the more he hides, the more I want to know. One night, he's all dressed up, smelling like that expensive cologne I got him for Christmas. He kisses my forehead, says he'll be late. I'm watching him leave, and this crazy idea hits me. I'm gonna follow him. So, I'm tailing my own husband like some cheesy detective in a noir film. He drives downtown, parks near this fancy new club, all neon lights and thumping bass. And then, he just walks in like he owns the place. I'm outside, peeking through the windows like a total creep. And there's Paul, laughing, chatting. He's surrounded by these artsy types, a crowd he never mingled with before. And he's so alive. I've never seen him like this. I head back home, my mind racing. Who is this man? I'm feeling all these things, confusion, curiosity, even a twinge of, is it jealousy? Paul, the predictable, the boring, is suddenly the most interesting person in my life. And I'm on the outside looking in. I confront him the next day. Where were you last night? I ask, trying to sound casual. He looks at me, a glimmer of something unreadable in his eyes, and says, just out with friends. Friends? Since when does Paul have friends that I don't know about? Since when does Paul have a life that doesn't include me? That night, as we sit across from each other at dinner, the silence is thick enough to cut with a knife. I'm watching him, and he's different. Not just in the way he looks or acts, but something deeper, like he's found a part of himself he didn't know existed. I realize then that I don't really know this man I married. And the scariest part? I want to know him, now more than ever. I never knew how fast the world could flip until the day Paul asked for a divorce. It hit me like a runaway train. That morning started like any other. I made coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. I was planning, scheming really, on how to bridge the gap that had grown between me and Paul. Maybe a romantic dinner, his favorite cocoa van, candles, the works. But when he walked into the kitchen, I knew something was off. He didn't make small talk or peck me on the cheek. Instead, he just stood there, like he was gearing up for a boxing match. We need to talk, he said, his voice steady but distant. My heart sank, you know that feeling, right? When you just know it's bad news. I sat down, clutching my coffee mug like a lifeline. I want a divorce, Paul blurted out, not meeting my eyes. It felt like the room spun around me. Divorce? We were supposed to be talking about open marriages and new adventures, not this. I laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound that even annoyed me. You're kidding, right? But the look on his face said it all. He wasn't kidding. He was done. I argued, pleaded, even cried. I told him we could fix whatever was broken, go to counseling, take a vacation, anything. But he was like a statue, unmoving, his decision carved in stone. The rest of the day was a blur. I wandered around our house, touching things as if they'd suddenly become foreign. The photos of us smiling, the expensive vases, the designer couch, they all seemed like relics from another life. That night, alone in our bed, I couldn't sleep. The silence was suffocating. I kept replaying everything in my head. Where did I go wrong? Was it the open marriage idea? Was it me, just being me? The next few days, I moved like a ghost through our home. Paul was busy with lawyers, his phone constantly buzzing. And me? I was busy staring at walls, lost in thoughts and what-ifs. I signed the papers in a daze. It was surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. And then, just like that, it was over. We were no longer Mr. and Mrs. Anything. I watched Paul pack his bags. Each shirt he folded, each book he boxed up, felt like he was erasing a part of our story. When he left, the house felt empty, like all the air had been sucked out. I sat there, in the deafening quiet, and it hit me. I had been living in a dream, a pretty little bubble that had just burst. And now, I was awake, alone, and clueless about what to do next. Ever seen a man reborn? That's Paul, walking out of our marriage like a phoenix rising from the ashes, and me? I'm just sifting through the soot. The day Paul announced he was leaving for good, he was a different creature. Gone was the predictable, agreeable man I married. In his place stood someone firm, resolute, and frighteningly confident. He had this air about him, like he just figured out the last piece of a puzzle. And that puzzle? It didn't include me anymore. I found myself pacing the length of our now too quiet house, replaying the moments, the decisions, the careless words. I want an open marriage. The sentence echoed in my mind, mocking me. What was I thinking? I wasn't unhappy, just unstimulated, and look where that got me. Paul's decisiveness cut through the process like a hot knife through butter. Meetings with lawyers, settlement agreements, division of assets, it was all arranged with terrifying efficiency. I signed papers in a daze, nodding along to terms I barely understood, numb to the core. Every signature felt like signing off pieces of my life, my identity. The woman who thrived in luxury and excitement was now sitting in a half-empty house, the walls echoing with the ghost of laughter and arguments. As the end neared, I found myself sitting more in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of fire and gold. There was a metaphor there. I'm sure endings and beginnings are something poetic like that. But all I felt was the chill of the evening settling in my bones. When the final day arrived, I watched as Paul did one last walk through of the house. He paused at certain spots, a small frown creasing his brow, perhaps remembering the same moments I did. Or maybe he was just checking to make sure he hadn't left anything behind. He stopped in front of me, his expression unreadable. "Goodbye," he said, and there was a softness there, a hint of the man I once knew. But it was fleeting, gone as soon as he turned and walked out the door, the click of the latch loud in the silent house. The weeks that followed were a blur. Friends offered sympathies and awkward pats on the back, but their words were muffled, distant. I moved through the days mechanically, attending to the necessary tasks to finalize the end of a chapter in my life. Looking around the house, our house, I felt a profound sense of loss. Not just for the marriage or the love that had once bloomed here, but for the person I was when I first stepped through these doors. Naive, hopeful, and so certain of the future. I spent nights on the balcony, the city lights a distant glitter. And in those quiet moments, I allowed myself to feel it all, the anger, the sadness, the piercing regret. I let the tears come, mourning not just the end of my marriage, but the end of who I thought I was. But with each passing day, a new determination took root. If Paul could emerge from this reborn, then damn it, so could I. I wasn't sure who I'd be on the other side, but I was ready to find out. Who knew starting from scratch would feel like free falling without a parachute? But here I am, learning to fly on my way down. Post-divorce life hit me like a cold shower. Gone were the days of mindless shopping sprees, high-end salons, and lunches at Michelin-star restaurants. Suddenly, I'm looking at price tags and budgeting words that never existed in my dictionary. I moved out of our mansion, of course. It felt too big, too empty. Now, I'm in this cozy two-bedroom apartment downtown. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. The walls aren't adorned with expensive art. Instead, there's a painting I attempted. It's terrible, but it makes me smile. My new life is a string of discoveries. Like, did you know there's more to coffee than just ordering it? I took up a barista course. There I was, frothing milk and trying not to burn myself, surrounded by people half my age. It was terrifying and exhilarating. I also realized I love gardening. My balcony's now my little green haven. There's something about nurturing a plant, watching it grow, that's incredibly satisfying. It's not the manicured lawns and exotic flowers of my past life, but my tiny herbs and succulents are my proud little achievements. My social circle changed, too. The fair weather friends vanished, and in their place, I found genuine connections. Like Mia from my yoga class, who laughs loudly and tells it like it is. Or Sam from the book club, whose life stories could fill novels. Then there's cooking. Paul and I always had a chef, but now, it's just me and my not-so-trusty cookbook. My first attempt at spaghetti carbonara turned into a weird, eggy mess. But you know what? I ate it with pride because I made it. And I'm learning, one burnt pot at a time. I started freelance writing, too. Nothing big, just some lifestyle articles here and there. But when I saw my name in print for the first time, it was a rush. It's my thoughts, my words, out there in the world. There are tough days, don't get me wrong. Days when I miss the comfort, the certainty of my old life. When the silence in my apartment gets too loud and I find myself scrolling through photos of Paul and me. But there's a newfound strength in me. Each day, each challenge, I'm rediscovering who I am. Not the wife of a rich man, not the socialite, but me, just me. And slowly, I'm building a life that's authentically mine. It's not perfect, it's not glamorous, but it's real. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to see what comes next. Life's funny, you know. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws you a curveball that changes everything. It was a rainy Tuesday when I heard about Paul's latest venture. The guy who I thought couldn't surprise me anymore was now the talk of the town. He'd started this tech company, something to do with environmental solutions, and it was booming. I heard he was happier than ever, and a part of me felt a strange mix of pride and something else. Regret, maybe? Sitting in my little apartment, with the rain drumming against the windows, I couldn't help but think about how I had underestimated him. All those years, I saw Paul through this lens of my own making, never really seeing him for who he was. And now, he was out there, making a difference, being the man I never gave him credit for. That realization hit me hard. I spent so many years chasing excitement, thinking Paul was the anchor holding me back. But in truth, I was my own anchor, my own barrier to growth. It's a tough pill to swallow, acknowledging your own flaws, your own mistakes. So, I started working on myself. I mean, really working on myself. Not the spa and mimosas kind of self-care, but the gritty, uncomfortable kind. I began with therapy cliché, I know. But sitting on that couch every Thursday, unraveling the knots in my mind, I learned more about myself than I ever did living in luxury. I realized I had prejudices, not just about Paul, but about life in general. I always thought happiness came from things, from status. But here I was, living a life so different from my past, and I was content. More than that, I was happy. I took up volunteering, something I never considered before. There's this local community center where I help out. It's nothing glamorous, but when I see the kids' faces light up during our art sessions, it's worth more than any designer dress I ever owned. I also made peace with my past. I reached out to Paul, not to rekindle anything, but to apologize, to acknowledge my part in our failed marriage. We met for coffee, a small, quaint place he chose. Seeing him again was surreal. He looked different, happier, more at ease. "I'm sorry," I said, the words feeling both heavy and freeing. He just nodded, a gentle, understanding smile on his face. "We both made mistakes," he replied. And just like that, a weight lifted off my shoulders. We talked a bit more about our lives, our new ventures. It was nice, talking to him without the baggage of our past. Leaving the coffee shop, I felt lighter. It was like closing a book and putting it back on the shelf. A good book, with its ups and downs, but one you've read and learned from. As I walked back to my apartment, the rain had stopped and the sun was peeking through the clouds. It felt symbolic, like the universe's way of saying, you're on the right path. Sometimes, the end of one story is just the beginning of another. And this is my beginning. Gone are the days of lavish parties and designer clothes. Now, it's about finding joy in the little things. Like my first attempt at making bread. Let me tell you, the kitchen was a disaster, but the laughter was real. I started reconnecting with old friends, the ones I'd left behind in my whirlwind of a married life. They were hesitant at first, but genuine bonds have a way of rekindling. We shared stories, not of glamorous events, but of real, raw life experiences. I never knew how much I missed that. Then there's the job. I landed a position at a small marketing firm. Nothing fancy, but it's mine, earned by me. Every day is a challenge, but it's thrilling to learn, to grow. I've come to realize that my value isn't tied to my bank account, but to the effort and passion I put into my work. And Paul? I hear about him now and then. He's doing well, really well, and oddly enough, that makes me happy. Seeing him thrive, in a way, validates my own journey. We've both found our paths, separate but equally fulfilling. I won't lie. There are moments of loneliness, moments when the quiet of my apartment feels overwhelming. But in those moments, I've learned to be my own comfort. I've picked up painting abstract, colorful, and free. Each stroke is a reflection of my thoughts, my emotions. I've also started a blog, sharing my journey, my ups and downs. The response has been unexpected. People connect with my story, and their words of encouragement are a balm to my soul. It's like building a community, a virtual one, but real nonetheless. There's also a new man in my life. No, not like that. He's a friend, someone who makes me laugh, challenges my ideas, and respects my space. We go on long walks, talk about everything and nothing. It's refreshing, having a connection that's not based on expectations, but on mutual respect and understanding. As I sit here, typing this, looking out at the city lights, I feel a sense of peace. It's not the fairy tale ending I once envisioned, but it's real. It's messy, beautiful, and uniquely mine. I've learned so much about life, love, and, most importantly, about myself. I've learned that strength isn't just about standing alone. It's about having the courage to start over, to rebuild. So, here's to new beginnings, to the journey ahead. It's not going to be easy, but I've got a feeling